All right, there we have a good shot of Logan Sargent in the Williams, and we're back to Baku, Azerbaijan for practice. And we're looking pretty good for this weekend, so no rain to be
We're going to be
seen.
logging some extra data during this session. Nothing you need to worry about, but as we have some new parts on the car, we'll just confirm they're performing to spec.
We did get our aero setups in, so right now, on paper, we are the fastest car out there, ahead of Alfa Romeo Haas, and then Red Bull dropped down to third. So it's going to be a sprint weekend, so we'll be having our hard tire compound as a live compound, and then the medium tires will come up at the end of the session. You guys will see that at the bottom for qualifying, and we're going to go ahead and knock out practice, so we'll see you for qualifying, the sprint, and the main event. Alright, so here we are for qualifying in Baku. Our not feeling happy about our times of the hards and mediums there at the bottom of the screen. But first time coming around on the reds of the soft tires, 145.250 for our first run here in Q1. And going to be our final run here in qualifying, about 3/10 gain off of 145. We're currently P19. You can hear how the car is redlining here on this long main straight. That's only going to be good enough for P18, so out in Q1. All right, so yeah, we struggled in qualifying last season here in Azerbaijan, in Baku, and we struggled here today. Mick Schumacher making it up to P13, making it to Q2, and that's only 1/10 of a second. How? Oh my god, it's so ridiculous. I didn't realize I was that close with how difficult this track was. Oscar Piastri, Logan Sargent, myself, Callie Mayer, and Joe Granu and the Sauber getting knocked out. And yeah, we were all within at least 1/100th of a second at least. A 0.7, 0.78, 0.89, 0.97. Yeah, so very challenging weekend for the sprint race and the main event to come. So let's get right to it.
Forget pit stops, forget fuel management. It's pedal to the metal all the way here as we get ready for today's sprint. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Lando Norris will lead us away from pole position, and starting next to them is George Russell. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Perez, Hamilton, Sainz, Leclerc, Verstappen, Gasly, Bottas, Magnussen, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Jackson, Mick Schumacher, Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, Sargent, Johnson, Mayer, and Joe Granu. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out. The formation lap gets underway ahead of today's sprint. It's going to be interesting to see who gets pole position. Almost ready to start the sprint as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
All right, so here we are lining up for the grid at the end of our formation lap for the sprint race back in P18. And you saw one of the Ferraris there, but the only ones on the medium tires, so we have nothing but improvement. Hopefully here, as we're on the left side, the two Countersports are between us, the Quadrant McLaren ahead of us. And here we are, P18 against Mayor and Sergeant. The 5 red lights are on here in Baku, and we are off. We're off to a pretty good start. The Sauber ahead of us, not so great of a start there of Sonoda, as we're moving to the outside. So we're up in P16 behind our teammate Schumacher against Piastri side by side there, as we try to move on the outside. As a little bit of scrubbing there with Piastri, almost rear-ending our teammate Schumacher, but we don't want to do that, especially on this track. We don't want to pull a Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen there in turn 1. But yeah, everybody's slotting into their positions here. We're going on to a break, a late lunge there against Piastri. No luck, as I was lost for words there for a second. But still, currently P16, lap 1 of 6 for the sprint race. And we got to look for another move here on lap 1, as we find our braking points compared to everybody else. We were not so great in qualifying, but as soon as we learn these braking points with the other drivers, then we do a lot better, as we're coming up to the castle section. Very difficult here, as I believe Leclerc was the one who smashed into the wall so many years ago in the real series. As we're coming back through Sector 2, into Sector 2, into Sector 3. Lose a little bit of ground on Piastri there in P15, but we still manage. We get our braking point pretty well here, as we're coming close to the wall, onto the curb. But yeah, so far so good. Only a gain of 2 positions as of right now, as we're still trying to stay within the tow of Piastri, because if we're not in the tow here along these last few corners, then we're going to lose a lot of ground and miss our turn a little bit there. But the train of 4 cars, you see the gap slowly trying to close in on us, as we're just under a second behind Piastri. They're trying to get away, but we're going to go ahead and brake late into turn 1. That's how we usually do it, brake late, find our own braking point compared to the AI, as we're on to lap 6. And on to lap 2, towards the end of lap 2 actually, is when we're actually able to close in on Piastri. You can see him on the inside there. We move on the outside. We're side by side coming out of the corner. And our teammate Mick Schumacher up in P14, ourselves in P15. So lap 2, the end of lap 2 here, as we're up in P15, no DRS yet. And Piastri 4/10 behind us and closing. But if we can outbrake him here at the end of the lap, we'll definitely be able to do so. But we get a free position there from Valtteri Bottas. You can see he went into the pits, so he most likely had some contact with another driver. I'm not sure who it was, if it was Schumacher or Jackson. But that's a free position up to P14, so that's 4.4 positions gained here as we're starting lap 3. DRS there on Schumacher, and he let off, so no DRS there for him. We're finally able to catch up to him on the start of lap 4. Coming out of the corner, coming in behind Aiden Jackson, and slotting in behind him. So it's going to be 3 wide between the outfit, or the Connor Sport of Aiden Jackson, and the 2 Aston Martin Hondas, as we make a position up against Jackson. So P12 and P13 respectively, our teammate behind us, as we're halfway through Sector 2 here on lap 4. Next up is going to be Nico Hulkenberg in the Alfa Romeo Haas. So we have a little bit of ground to make up, and by the end of lap 5 we managed to make up that ground, and we go on the outside of turn 1, taking that position from Hulkenberg here, side by side, going through turn 1 up to turn 2, and we stay ahead for that DRS, and we managed to hold on to P11 for the end of this sprint race. As you can see, we are driving by through Sector 2. So we're going to be pretty happy into the main event, starting in P11.
All right, race over. Take care of the car on the way in.
So let's review the updated driver standings. This result then narrows the gap between our championship leader and the rest of the standings. The grid is set then, so that just leaves the race itself. Join us tomorrow, where we'll be live with all the action. And until then, goodbye.
All right, so we were able to make some ground up in our sprint race from P18 to P11. Mick Schumacher also making up 2 positions. And we're starting outside the top 10, so hopefully we can keep that momentum and help Mick finish in the points. As there was some contact against Valtteri Bottas. I'm not sure what happened. He went in pretty early. But yeah, so we have some progression here from qualifying and a decent result from our sprint race, even though we're outside of the points by a ways, P8 there. But Mercedes with the sprint race closing the gap even more to Red Bull as Sergio Perez P1 and Max Verstappen P5. So without further ado, let's get to the main event.
Good afternoon and welcome from Baku. This was the arena, if you think back to 2017, of one of the most eventful races of modern history, with controversy behind the safety car, last-second overtakes, and a historic podium for Williams and for Lance Stroll. Let's find out what lies in store for us this year. It's time for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Sergio Perez will lead us away from pole position, edging out Lando Norris, who'll start from P2. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Russell, Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, Magnussen, Gasly, Ocon, Johnson, Mick Schumacher, Hulkenberg, Jackson, Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, Sargent, Mayer, Joe, and Valtteri Bottas begins the race from the back of the grid. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today.
All right, the one thing I've noticed throughout the this sprint weekend is that we have a lot of loading issues for our screens, but P11 and P12 start for Aston Martin. And I have yet to customize this, so I don't know why it's doing that. But it looks like they're wanting us to do a medium to a soft strategy, so we're gonna see what we can do about this and go from there. So let's get to the race.
The formation lap gets underway and every driver will be looking to settle in for the race ahead, making sure that their car is ready for the battle once the lights go out. As the cars make their way back to the starting grid to form up and get ready for lights out, let's hope the race ahead today is a thrilling one that will go down as a memorable Grand Prix in the history books.
All right, here we are lining up for the main event and starting in P11. So after a rough qualifying and a good run for that 6-lap sprint race from P18 to P11, we have some good ground to cover, and with the way we went through the sprint race, we might be able to get some points, podium, maybe a win. I'll have to wait and see as all the cars finish up on the grid. 5 red lights are on next to our teammate Mick Schumacher, and we're off to a good start. The Alfa Romeo Hassel Magnussen off to a worse start than us as we file in behind Esteban Ocon and the Williams. The inside this time compared to the sprint race, our teammate Schumacher passing Hulkenberg there on the inside as well. A little bit of a lockup there from Pierre Gasly, a little bit of contact on Esteban Ocon as we couldn't find any room. And you can see by our different race strategies, we get past the Alpine of Pierre Gasly a lot easier with him on those hard tires. No move on the inside here as we try to get as close as we can to Ocon. A little bit of a nudge there, but no warning for contact as we're trying to close in on the Ferrari of Leclerc and Sainz. You can see Schumacher ahead of Jackson there just behind us. Schumacher just outside of the points behind Pierre Gasly. A little bit of a braking point issue there through sector 2, excuse me, as the 2 Ferraris are ahead of us, and we're basically single file coming up to this castle section We don't want to nick this castle section because it'd be the end of the race and cause a red flag. So we try to push this car as much as possible. See there, we went a little bit too far on our braking point. And a little bit of a spin trying to put the power down. So Gasly, less than 3/10 behind us. Still in the first lap as we're pedal to the metal here. Hitting our braking point pretty well. Giving it some space. There's a little bit of a spin there. Almost coming in contact with the wall. All the other drivers coming in behind us. But this time around, P9, as we're coming on to the fast sector 3, and it's a 2-position gain off of 1 lap. So if we're like this for the rest of the race, then we are pretty good chances to get up to the podium as Russell, Norris, Perez, Hamilton fight for the top 3 spots. You can see Gasly and Schumacher there on the inside fighting for position. Schumacher trying to make a pass on the outside. And I don't know if we interfered with that, but we went wide on that braking point as we had no one to fight for to brake early, so I kind of missed my spot there, but we got on the foot pretty well here to start lap 2. And lap 4, we see a lockup from Leclerc giving us an opportunity. He gets his DRS from the Ocon. We move him to the inside so we get the outside of that next corner. And we make that move on the outside on these mediums. Cut the corner a little bit. You can see a little bit of oversteer there, and I wasn't sure what it was. And we have to make a quick look back. On board with Charles Leclerc. He was going to be the pass here, and he actually had a lockup on his front right. So we went sideways from a lockup. So that's just a regular racing incident. But we do get that position on Charles Leclerc and the Ferrari on those hard tires. So thank you very much. Leclerc, we're up in a P8. As Schumacher still trying to fight Pierre Gasly, and now back into P11 as halfway through lap 4, and our job is to catch up to Esteban Ocon as we're coming through the castle section. You can see how close we're getting, almost some full contact there. I checked my tires here to see if I had a puncture or not, and it's not enough for a puncture, but there was a tiny bit of wear and tear. End of lap 4, you can see the red lining of our car. We're going to make a move on the inside of Esteban Ocon. We wait till the very last second to make that move, so we don't move him. And, yeah, start of lap 5. But, as we're starting lap 5, we could see Oscar Piastri in the Quadrant McLaren. He's slowing down, so he's going to have an engine failure. The first engine failure here, the end of lap 4. And there's nowhere for him to go, so he's going to have to go all the way down to the pit entry. I thought he was going to pull off here, but there's still not enough room. But here we are at the pit entry. Instead of him going into the pits, he just pulls into this little median area. And then next up, we have Yuki Tsunoda behind the Alfa Romeo Haas and the Sauber. It's actually going to be the end of lap 5 as we're still in P8. You can see I don't know what he was doing there, but he has an engine failure as well. You have the Connor Sport there passing. And this is the start of the Sector 3 fast-paced corners. So the only place he's going to find here is right by the light there. So, lap 7, we're up into P7 against Ocon. You could see Tsunoda and Piastri back there. DNFs already. And this is that following lap as Ocon and Gasly are fighting behind us for a position. See Ocon on the outside, coming up to the start-finish line. Side by side here, we brake late, try to hold that position against him. And we do so very well as the Alpine just sits back and waits for us to fight so we can make his move. So lap 8 now, and a little bit of lockup there from Sainz way ahead of us though. 3-second gap between us and Sainz. We have a lot of work to do. But on this same lap 8, we are on board with Aiden Jackson in the Connor Sport cars. We're coming up to the castle section. He has soft tires. He's still behind that Alfa Romeo Haas. And as he's coming around this corner, he just puts the foot down and the back end slams into the wall. We're going to be going over to another perspective here in a second. Going to be a camera view behind the 2 Alfa Romeo Haas's. He's coming around the corner pretty well. Puts his foot down and then just slam. You can actually see the Williams stops there and ghost. So that's going to be a red flag. All right, so red flag at the time of recording. We don't know what happened, but we will have just looked over it. And yeah, so we're going to be doing a 9-lap restart. Race restart, lap 10. And we're going to be running the rest of this race like an extended sprint. So, let's get back to the race. All right, so we have a free pit stop up in P7 on softs, new softs. And by the way we launch, our lights are off again. That Red Bull Verstappen off to a very slow start. We're ahead of Sainz and Verstappen there as we're on the outside this time again. Inside is Lando Norris fighting for P3 at this point. They're side by side up there in the front, Hamilton and Perez. As we're up to P4 from P7, so this is off to a good start. And these first few corners, I honestly felt that nobody changed their tires. I thought, okay, maybe it would have been a little bit too early or a little bit too late to change tires. But by the time I got through corner one, I honestly thought these top 5 people, other than myself, were on old tires, other than their current tire strategy. So we actually hit this corner pretty well coming into the castle section, and the gap is okay at this point, but we're up in P3 after we made that pass on Lando Norris. And we're coming up to Sergio Perez through the castle section, so we have to be very careful. Skimming the wall there, just before that hard left-hander. And trying to put the foot down as best as we can. A little bit of a slip up there, as we're almost done with lap 10 already of lap 18 on the soft tires. And right now, as long as we can defend against Lando Norris, we have a podium spot with some much needed points. So, coming around this corner, up against the gearbox of Sergio Perez, trying to stay in his toe as best as possible. You can see that he's gaining on Hamilton, and we're losing ground as we kind of miss our points on those corners. You can see him skim the wall there, trying to make a move on the inside, but we're going to have that toe. Our car is redlining, and it's going to be a 3 wide up to the start-finish line. We're going to be on the outside, Red Bull on the inside, and we break along the Mercedes. Sergio Perez on the inside, so we get an easy P2 here to start lap 11. So we haven't got a second place podium as of yet, and it would be nice to get this podium for P2, but it would be nicer to get the win. So you'd see we're still following. Callie Mayer this time had some contact with a wall at the end of this lap, so you're pulling off, and it was going to be a it wasn't an engine failure, but it was terminal damage. And so you're pulling off to the side as she had the medium tires. Another perspective here as she comes in contact with this, not this wall, but it's going to be the next one. Wish it was a better view. You could see the back end kick out there a little bit. So that back end kicked out, and yeah, so has to be something with a suspension issue. And you can see Callie Mayer there back down in P17 for the DNF. We're side by side with Hamilton coming across the line. We're side by side still dumping ERS. We're going to have the outside, so we're going to have the advantage into turn 1. We're going to brake a little bit earlier than we usually do. Try to do the cutback, give him first place through this straight, and then after turn 2, we'll just overtake again for P1. As you can see, 2 tenths back as Perez and Lando Norris are fighting for position. And we let off a little bit, but no worries. By the end of lap 12, we're back at it again with this long straight. This time we have DRS, we have the toe, we hit the timing line before he even had a chance. So we have DRS before he even could get us. You can see him in the mirror there on the left side, and this time around we brake late to make sure we stay ahead of Hamilton. So lap 13 now, and we're in the lead, and I honestly feel like we're on board for a podium finish for P1, the top of the podium. So it'd be very nice to get another win since Spain. Lap 14, Perez now 4 tenths behind us as we're coming through sector 2. A little bit of a spin there, and our engine, our gears, you can see the HUD there are not shifting as we're coming up to the castle section.
Right, you might struggle to get into gear at the normal speeds. We're seeing a fault with the gearbox.
So our gearbox at this point, I looked after he told me our gearbox is at 82, 83%. And it's in the red zone for a DNF, so I'm losing gears. As you can see, Hamilton just passed us, and Max Verstappen there again, almost causing him to crash as we're trying to get through our gears. And skimming the wall there, coming through Sector 2, the end of Sector 2, the start of Sector 3. You see the McLaren of Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz close behind, as it was horrible. fourth gear, fifth gear. You can see Lando Norris there in the mirror trying to make a pass, and he just does there on the inside. You can see the Ferrari and the Alpine of Pierre Gasly, and then Ocon behind all of these cars looking to pass us as we're having these engine issues. The end of lap 14. 4 laps to go at this point. Lap 15, we have the inside corner against Lando Norris. We're up into P7, coming out of this corner, P6, or 6th gear, 5th gear, 4th gear. We're still having trouble, even though on these soft tires, this gear issue was giving us issues. We're already back up into P5 from P1, just not even a lap ago. And it just seems like this won't end. We have a little bit of contact there from Hulkenberg, but it was yet another racing incident. So we're trying to get through as best as we can. We're coming through Sector 2. You can see Ocon and Sainz are side by side behind us, looking to make a pass. We're still having issues, but it wasn't till this castle section, this spin here, where our gears went back to normal. And I knew at this point that our gearbox is in a danger zone. And it's the actual gearbox this time. It's not like a heat unit or a kinetic unit that happened last race in Monza. So even though I wanted to push this car here on lap 15, I knew that we were in the danger zone. So I was kind of expecting a DNF here in Baku. Lap 17, we're finally back up to par with Lando Norris, fighting for P6. The start of lap 17, 2 laps to go. This lap and the last lap and the next one. This lap and one more. Is that we have the momentum, we have the DRS, we moved the McLaren out. We tried to move the McLaren out, we moved to the inside. You can see Carlos Sainz there back in P8 trying to make a move as well, but not quite close enough. We're trying to catch up to Pierre Gasly, but it's not going to be enough. It's going to be a P6 finish for us here in Baku.
In Azerbaijan, great work from the whole team here at the track and back at the factory as well. And some pretty handy driving for good measure. Tell me, Ant, how do you think they were able to deliver such an incredible result today?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalize on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
Red Bull are our winners today after showcasing some incredible driving. There's been a huge push from them lately to stay competitive with the other teams, and they're certainly proving themselves. Let's have a look then at the driver's standings. Max Verstappen should be pleased with his performance, making gains at the top of the table. So, Anthony Davidson, who would you rank as your driver of the day?
Well, there was a lot of incredible driving out there today, but if I had to pick someone, it's got to be Sergio Perez. Fantastic driving.
Let's move on to the constructors. And pulling further ahead in the standings, it's Red Bull. It's been an absolutely wild weekend of Formula One action, and I can't wait to see what's next.
All right, so very challenging weekend as we got to the main race. And yeah, I thought we were going to have some trouble, but we were doing okay up till we come to our pit stop, but we didn't get to our pit stop. We got to a red flag restart. The standing restart was able to let us jump up a bunch of positions there after the red flag. I believe it was caused by Aiden Jackson. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look here at the race result. But Mick Schumacher, no luck. He lost one position there. So Oscar Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda, Aiden Jackson, and Callie Mayer. So both Connor Sport cars out. And I believe it was Aiden Jackson that caused the red flag. And Callie Mayer retired shortly after that red flag came back. And a lot of bumping, a lot of lockups, as you guys saw from, I believe it was the Ferrari or Mercedes, the front right lockup there in Sector 2. But Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen is a 1-2. It does not help with the championship. George Russell there in P3. And yeah, so there after the red flag on those soft tires, I was starting to pull away, and I thought this is in the bag. This may have been our second race win of the season. But then we ran into those engine issues. Those gears were slow. It's the same exact thing that happened to us in Vegas last season, which I was really worried that we were going to go ahead and be another one of those people that DNF. But luckily, we were able to run the rest of the race with no problem once the gear shifts came back to us, even though it was in a danger zone. So we're going to make sure to swap out to our last gearbox, and hopefully that will last us till the end of the season as we wrap up this race here in Baku, Azerbaijan. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I know this outro is a little bit longer than usual, but a lot of stuff going on, and we're yet to hear of any regulation changes for the start of Season 3. So we'll be looking forward to that here within the next few races, if not the next race. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.